my chores are through. I don't know how long I'll be, but I'm not going.
He was a cricketer in his youth and a Pan American Games long jump bronze medalist in 1959 before he became the second Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda from 1994 to 2004. Sir Lester Bird departed this life on the 9th of August at 83 years of age, but so much of what he achieved and pioneered will continue to serve the region. Colin James, editor of the Digital Publication SportsWorld, joins us now as we look back at the life and legacy of the late Lester Bird. Well, Colin, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. 4 days now since the big man has passed, and we hear so much about what he gave to sport as an administrative leader and even a participant. We just spoke of his long jump, a bronze medal in the Pan Am Games in Chicago in 1959, and also being a promising young fast bowler in his day. How is the country reacting over the past 3-4 days to the passing of Sir Lester?
Well, most of it, Lance, has been reminiscing on the life of Sir Lester Bird. As you would have indicated, he was a well-known athlete in his day. Many of us remember him from his exploits in terms of what we'd have read and what we'd have heard those who would have been competing with him, or those who would have observed him from the point of view that he was excellent in track and field. The long jump, he also did the high jump, and he also did the 100 meters dash. Many of us have come to learn about his exploits on the cricket field as a fast bowler as well. I have been reading his autobiography, The Comeback Kid, in which he spoke and wrote about how he had basically hit the batsman for Montserrat in his second ball, which he bowled for Antigua back in the 1950s as a young 17-year-old fast bowler representing Antigua in the Leeward Islands tournament. And also he has also written about his ability as well to play football. So many Antiguans and Barbudans have been just reflecting on his life, not only as a politician, a former prime minister, but also, his exploits as an athlete.
Yeah, a lot of his success achieved at Michigan University, where he was an All-American and also Big Ten champion as well in the long jump. But he was a pretty big man, wasn't he? About 6 feet 4 inches tall. And even though when I got to know him, he was advanced in his years, he did pose a pretty imposing figure physically, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he reckoned that he was 6'7". So, and then he wrote, in his book that his height and his ability to use his long legs were basically the attributes that propelled him to be recognized as an outstanding track and field athlete, first at the Antigua Grammar School, which he attended, and then at Michigan University. He was actually recruited by a scout who came down to watch the West Indies Championships back in 1958. And he got the scholarship, the first ever Antiguan to get a scholarship to university in the United States. And he really cherished that. He has written about it as one of his most cherished moments of his life.
Yeah, we know he was a fast bowler for Antigua and also the Leeward Islands. I read in one of the reports following his death that he could have been a West Indies fast bowler. Was he that good?
Yes, speaking to those who were among his contemporaries, and even basically reading some of the writings by his close late friend, Tim Hector, in the Outlet newspaper in the 80s and 90s. A lot of his contemporaries reckoned that he could have been a West Indies great, and he felt he could have been a West Indies fast bowler. And he said in his book, The Comeback Kid, that it was basically because of the fact that he was from one of the smaller islands of the Caribbean, and maybe the fact too that he had gotten the scholarship to go to Michigan University, why he didn't become a fast bowler for the West Indies. He also wrote about the fact too that just before going off to Michigan, Ron Kanai came to Antigua and as part of a coaching stint, and he had bowled to Ron Kanai, the West Indies great batsman, and he said that he felt that he gave Ron Kanai a lot of problems with his bowling. So he was highly thought of as being a possible West Indies fast bowler back in the day.
Definitely. I feel like we missed that part of the action from seeing him, do his thing. I'm going to move away now from the sporting aspect and speak about, his development, of course, in economic diversification for Antigua and Barbuda, a country that was heavily reliant on sugarcane. I know he had a massive role to play in that economic diversification.
Yes, basically, he was the architect of our modern tourism industry. Sylvester, maybe again because of the fact that he was exposed to the United States from an early age. He was actually born in the United States in 1938. He came to Antigua when he was about 3 years old, and then he went to take up the scholarship in Michigan. And he had basically a broad view in terms of modern development, and he used, the tourism industry as part of that. He's principally responsible for the duty-free shopping center in the heart of St. John's called Heritage Key, the Royal Antiguan Hotel, which is now called the Royalton, a 9-story edifice, was part of his brainchild. And also too, other hotels in Antigua and Barbuda would have expanded because of the fact that he would have encouraged the owners of those hotels to expand because he felt that Antigua needed 5-star rooms to attract the creme de la creme, one of his favorite phrases, in terms of the tourists who are coming to the Caribbean. He wanted the creme de la creme to come to Antigua. So he always pictured Antigua as being, maybe small in size, but, big in terms of outlook and also in terms of ambition. And he sort of instilled that in the generation that would have been maybe before my time, after my time, because we were always of the view that, no matter how small Antigua is, we can achieve great things. And I believe, someone like Sir Viv and Sir Andy would have, basically saw the vision that he had for Antigua and Barbuda and basically, used that as part of their overall development as West Indies cricketers, and showing that coming from a small island, they can achieve big things.
Definitely, and we can see that, his vision has manifested, and of course, Antigua and Barbuda are reaping the benefits of that vision. He will be awarded a state funeral on August 26th, and of course, there are talks that they're hoping for a public holiday. Do you feel as if that's fitting enough for somebody of his caliber?
Well, the government has already declared that August 26th will be a public holiday, and that's a fitting honor for a former prime minister. But I believe that the present administration will go a little bit further. Already back in April of this year, the Lone Hospital was renamed the Celeste Bird Mount St. John Medical Center. There are many who feel that the Heritage Key shopping complex should also be named in his honor. Someone might also say too that the Yaska Sports Complex, which recently resurfaced with a brand new Mondo certified track, should also bear his name as well. So I think there are going to be other fitting monuments that would be named after him. Parliament will be meeting on Monday to pay the last respects to him. So I'm expecting that coming out of that parliamentary session, which will be a joint sitting of the House of Representatives and the Senate, I'm expecting that, probably Prime Minister Gaston Brown and maybe the sports minister, some of the government cabinet ministers will make some pronouncements as to what they feel more fitting tribute should be in honor of Celeste.
Yeah,
because he really deserved it.
Yeah, and Colin, finally, I note that he was also a former president of the Antigua and Barbuda Cricket Association and was given some credit as Prime Minister for the movement of the West Indies Cricket Board at the time, which is what it was called then, the movement of the Secretariat from Barbados to Antigua. I covered a press conference at the Hilton Hotel in Barbados one Friday evening, almost 2 decades ago, that made that decision that the West Indies Cricket Board Secretariat would be moving to Antigua.
Yes, and that's the point that I was making earlier on, how he saw Antigua being small in size, but also big in terms of outlook. And he knew and he felt that bringing the West Indies Cricket Board headquarters to Antigua would be a feather in Antigua's cap. And at that time, the EC dollar, and still is a strong currency. And he knew that, the whole question of pegging of the EC dollar pegged to the US dollar would have basically put the West Indies Cricket Board in good standing. And through the instrumentality as well of the late Clavis Joseph, who basically approached him about it, and Celeste jumped on that idea, and the the West Indies Cricket Board is headquarters here. There were also some, some benefits as well. The officials of the West Indies Cricket Board almost enjoyed ambassador or diplomatic status by relocating to Antigua.
Yeah.
So he knew how to sweeten the pot to make sure that the board came here, and that was another of his successes in life because with the West Indies Cricket Board being in Antigua, and also the former Stanford Cricket Ground, now the coolest cricket ground, and also the Sir Richard Stadium, because when Cricket World Cup was being mooted to come to the Caribbean in 2007, he was behind that whole move to get a brand new cricket stadium for Antigua and Barbuda.
Yeah.
And although he would have felt that the Antigua Recreation Ground would have been redeveloped to include what he called cantilevers, overhead stands, he felt that that the move from St. John's to North Sound for a brand new cricket stadium was what was needed at the time to accommodate matches to Cricket World Cup 2007.
Colin, we fully appreciate your joining us on the show today to look back at Sir Lester Bird and the legacy that he has created, not only as a Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, but his contribution to sport as well. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
Yeah, Colin, a journalist himself and also a former government senator in Antigua and Barbuda, currently the editor of the publication, the online publication SportsWorld. And Mariah, a giant of Caribbean politics passing here, and in the space of two years, we have seen the passing of former prime ministers as well. Edward Seaga, who died on his birthday in May 2019. Last year, July, Owen Arthur also passed away, the former Barbados Prime Minister, and now Sir Lester Bird. All Labour Party men, I might add, but Sir Lester, obviously, even if you listen to Colin just now, gave a lot to Antigua and Barbuda.
Definitely, and he lived a full life, and when I say that in all aspects. When we listed his political achievements, there were too many to list. We spoke about him being involved in sport, and not just championing for sport, but actually playing the sports himself. We heard the journalists there saying that, he would have been forced to be reckoned with as a fast bowler. I would have loved to see that myself as an ardent fan of cricket. And of course, we all know what he did for the Caribbean. So, when somebody like that passes, we do know for sure that their legacy will live on through their work. And of course, Antigua and Barbuda are seeing the benefits through tourism. And of course, may his soul rest in peace.
Yeah, and of course, in the 1950s and 60s, and as Colin just mentioned, pretty difficult from the Leeward Islands and Antigua and Barbuda to get into a West Indies team. It would have been, the likes of IPA Richards and Andy Roberts in the early 1970s that broke ground for Antigua and Barbuda and the Leeward Islands. We go to break. When we come back, Mariah has the second zone updates.
I don't know how long I'll be, but I'm not gonna let you down. Darling, wait and see. And between now and then, till I see you again, I'll be